So we did, in 2005, we did another study for DEQ, which was a heat model study, in which we went throughout the Yachats system. We took flows at every estuary. We took temperatures throughout the year. Excuse me, at every estuary, at every tributary. We did 28 measurements. Along with, at the mouth of every tributary, we would take a flow, and then we would take a flow at the main stem, where it would enter. We had so much information. I mean, we just had this pile of information. The DEQ, and then we had physical descriptions of where it was. We did shade cover analysis. We spent most of the summer working just for DEQ to do this thing so we could get a heat model. What they promised us was, when they had the heat model up, we could do a flow measurement and a temp measurement anywhere in the system, and it would tell us what was going on everywhere, which was a tremendous tool for determining what was going on in the system. We never got it.
So what about clear cuts? Is that as big an enemy as sun?
Clear cuts, yeah, of course. I mean, it warms up the water. There is now, I mean, the Department of Forestry is in charge of that. We have monitored clear cuts. The water temperature is, of course, a problem with that. Our problem is sediment. That we have monitored sediment increases below clear cuts, which are very marked. There is no standard for sediment. I mean, you can't say, you know, there's too much dirt in the system, which wasn't there before, because there is no standard for how much is too much. So all that we can say is, well, you really screwed this up. And the timber company will say, eh.
Sediment will affect pH, sediment will
everything.
affect...
And a lot of sediment will completely wipe out an entire spawning bed. But if you don't have a standard for something, you can't regulate. And there is no standard for turbidity. Elisa.
Have you tested, or is it possible to test the toxicity of the river water, the groundwater, for the herbicide spraying, you know, of the forest lands? Have you found any connection to the herbicide that it is spraying?
I'll tell you the parameters we did. Those are very expensive tests. And Steve Trask did it on the Alsea and did find residues way down below where they had actually applied the herbicides. We didn't do that. What we did was we did temperature. We did both temperature monitoring throughout the season plus grab samples. We did dissolved oxygen, turbidity, conductivity, pH, and E. coli. That's all we did. Those are the basic parameters for determining kind of basic health of the water. So, I mean, you can start going way beyond that. We should have been doing nutrient studies. That could conceivably have told us what is feeding all the bacteria in the estuary that's causing all of this oxygen use. That if we had been able to take a look at the possible sources of nutrients addition upstream, we might have been able to say, oh, now we know what's causing this problem in the estuary. But we didn't do that. That's really kind of, I mean, DEQ has all of our information. Yeah.
Did you have to sign some kind of non-disclose thing relative to your triumph before you even got into the courts? And what was the information of your settlement and agreement available to the citizenry of, say, Medford, I think was one of the places you mentioned.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that, I mean, certainly there was no indication that this was going to be a private document because it came out as part of a water right. It was attached to the next water right which was issued to the city. The city had to give up amongst other things, its previous water right, and rights to other sources that it had in the valley. That was one of our requirements. That all of these, they had rights all over the place, and we made them give all of those up as part of this agreement.
But did Medford achieve the same sort of situation?
I really don't know. This would be a question for Water Watch, because they work on a policy level. And essentially what we were doing, I mean, Yachats was the tail wagging the dog. We were affecting state policy without even knowing it. And the reason that they wanted us to settle was to keep us from doing some real permanent harm.
Oh, good.
Has your story, this story, had national attention?
Oh, I hope not.
You know, just listening to you, it just reminded me so much of one of those endless but fascinating New Yorker articles.
But you know something?
It would inspire other
What I said at the
citizens.
beginning is really true. It is very typical of the kinds of things that were going on here in the 80s and the kinds of battles. I mean, this one is nothing. I mean, this is, my God, this is Yachats. This is a pissing match between one person and a city of 500 people. The Van Strums, who lived in Five Rivers, took on Dow Chemical. And they won. Paul Engelmeyer and Chuck Willard took on the Forest Service. I mean, they took on the whole Forest Service and their logging policy, because the Forest Service was going to be going up 10 Mile and cutting way too much. And they were there at the beginning of all of this, saying, you can't do it. And they were facing, I mean, these incredible questions, like the timber industry. I mean, everybody, I mean, the entire country was saying, wait a second, hold on. We're talking about timber, we're talking about building materials, we're talking about jobs, we're talking about mills, we're talking about trucks. And you guys are talking about owls and salamanders. You're crazy. Why should anybody listen to you? It is a miracle that these people, like Paul and Chuck, not only got listened to, but were in the front of something that was happening everywhere. And I mean, mine is not the remarkable story.
Well, you tell it very well.
Leon.
Wayne Dyer, I don't know if you know who Wayne Dyer is, but he tells the story of when he was in 5th grade. He came home one day after school crying, and his mother said, "Why are you crying?" And he said, "Because my teacher called me a scurvy elephant." So she said, "Well, I'll go to school tomorrow with you and find out about that." So she did. She went to school, and she told his 5th grade teacher that Wayne had come home and said that she had called him a scurvy elephant and his feelings were hurt. And she laughed and she said, "No, I called him a disturbing element." As a longtime friend of Jim's, I'm so thankful that he was willing to step out of his role as an artist and be a disturbing element, and accidentally become an environmentalist, Jim, who's done a whole lot more than you're giving yourself credit for. Thank you.
I'm wondering if your studies will provide a basis to control population growth in Yachats in the future.
It's like a contraceptive.
If you don't have water available, how can you?
Yeah, there's a question. Are you thinking of adding contraceptives to the water? You know? That is what I have been accused of doing all along. I mean, this was the city's thing, is that because I was involved with the Planning Commission, because I was involved with an attempt to keep people from doing a stupid development up on top, the assumption was that I was trying to limit the city's water in order to limit the city's population capabilities. And I didn't know how to answer that. I mean, no. That wasn't what I was doing. It would be nice if the city did that, but I didn't expect that to happen.
they would have water capacity for growing.
I think so. I think that's the way to go. I mean, we do have a lot of water. We just don't have a lot of ability to store it. Well, thank you very much. Let me repeat. So if you want to see the data abstract for last year's study, I have like